She loved my grandson. She saw her grandson before I saw him. I mean, she kept him. That's why I said my mom was lucky because my mom was giving her money that she was going.
6:41. Good evening. I'd like to call the order of the February 13th, 2020 meeting for the P&Z or Planning and Zoning Board. We'll begin with a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Margaret Shepherd.
Here.
William Wiley.
Present.
Stephen Hunt.
Present.
James Gallen.
Here.
Anthony Brown.
President.
Evelyn Harris Clark.
Present.
Moeti Nube.
Present.
John Gustafson.
Here.
Renee Burgess. You have a quorum.
Thank you all. Acknowledgement of board meeting absence notifications.
Yes, thank you, sir. Jeff Gagnon, Acting Director of Development Services. We did hear from our chairperson that she'd be unable to attend tonight's meeting. So with that, we'd have one board member absent, so we'd ask that the first alternate receive voting rights for tonight's meeting.
Very well. Item 4, additions or deletions to the agenda.
Thank you, sir. We do not have any additions or deletions to tonight's meeting. I did want to welcome our friends from the Riviera Beach Volunteers and Police Service Group. They hold monthly or annual meetings, and they actually invited me to speak at their meeting. And I told them, unfortunately, we had a conflict, but invited them to our meeting, and they actually took us up on the invite. So we want to welcome that group to our meeting tonight. Thank all of them for attending. Their intent is to really learn about different departments and processes, so this is probably a great opportunity to see it firsthand. So I just want to welcome that group. Thank you.
Welcome all. Item 5, disclosure by board members and adoption of the agenda. Hearing none, approval of the minutes for January 9th, 2020.
I so move.
Second.
That was first by Hunt and second by Ms. Shepherd. Roll call.
Margaret Shepherd.
Yes.
William Wiley.
Present.
Stephen Hunt.
Yes.
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 James Gallen.
Yes.
Anthony Brown.
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark.
Yes.
Moeti Nube.
Yes.
John Gustafson.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Moving on, unfinished business. Mr. Gagnon.
Thank you, sir. You know what? I failed to mention that with the chairperson out, Vice Chair Mr. Gustafson would serve in the chair capacity. Probably doesn't need to be stated, but just for the record, we'll make that announcement. So thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Tonight's business, we have multiple items under unfinished business, which are actually carrying over from our previous Planning and Zoning Board meeting, where these items were discussed on January 9th of this year. These items were also workshopped on December of last year. It was December 19th of 2019. If it pleases the board, I'd like to provide a staff presentation for all 4 items. It's letters A, B, C, and D under unfinished business. They're all associated with the same development proposal. So just for continuity, it would probably be best to have a uniform presentation, if that so pleases the board.
Any comments from the board?
Nope.
Very well.
Okay, thank you. So for the record, we have 4 applications that are currently under staff review and have been provided before the Planning and Zoning Board tonight. The first is an abandonment of a city canal right-of-way, which is staff number AB-1902. The second is a land use map amendment, which is LU-18-02. Third is a zoning map amendment, RZ-18-02. And fourth and final is site plan approval, which is SP-18-13. For the record, the first item is an ordinance of the City Council of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving the application from BLP Blue Heron LLC requesting abandonment of approximately 57,520 square feet of canal right-of-way located adjacent to and north of the vacant parcel of land identified by parcel control number 56 43 42 29 37 000 0030, located north of West Blue Heron Boulevard, south of West 23rd Street, east of R.J. Henley Avenue and west of Avenue O, establishing a perpetual city utility access easement and providing for an effective date. The second, for the record, is an ordinance of the City Council of City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving the application from BLP Blue Heron LLC, requesting a future land use map amendment from an office designation to a commercial designation for approximately 4.91 acres of vacant land, identified by parcel control number 56 43 42 29 37 000 0030, and including land formerly designated as canal right-of-way, located north of West Blue Heron Boulevard, south of West 23rd Street, east of R.J. Henley Avenue and west of Avenue O, and providing for an effective date. Our third item is an ordinance of the City Council of City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving the application from BLP Blue Heron LLC requesting a zoning map amendment from an OP Office and Professional District designation to a CG General Commercial District designation for approximately 4.91 acres of vacant land identified by parcel control number 56 43 42 29 37 0000030, and including land formerly designated as canal right-of-way, located north of West Blue Heron Boulevard, south of West 23rd Street, east of R.J. Henley Avenue, and west of Avenue O, and providing for an effective date. The fourth and final item is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving an application from BLP Blue Heron LLC, requesting site plan approval to construct 5 commercial buildings totaling approximately 31,286 square feet on approximately 4.91 acres of vacant land, identified by parcel control number 56 43 42 29 37 0000030, and including land formerly designated as canal right-of-way located north of West Blue Heron Boulevard, south of West 23rd Street, east of R.J. Henley Avenue and west of Avenue O, providing for conditions of approval and providing for an effective date. So what you have before you is an aerial view of the site. The site that we're discussing tonight is currently called out in red. It's on the north side of Blue Heron Boulevard and indicated here. This is a little bit closer view of the site. You can see how it's kind of bookends by 2 different roadways. There's a canal that runs on the north side of the property, and we have single-family residential uses to the north of the canal. This is a view from the eastern property line looking west. And this is from the western property line looking east. Again, you can see in this photo the canal running east and west. So to briefly talk about some of the project items, all 4 of these items would require approval in order for the project to move forward as proposed. If any individual item didn't proceed, then the project could not proceed successfully. So the existing land area as currently platted is approximately 3.59 acres, and we approximate that the canal abandonment will add an additional 1.32 acres to the site, so that will generate the 4.91 total acres. The city sees this as a benefit because we're creating over an acre of taxable land that currently is serving as canal only, And with this proposal, that canal function would still exist. It would just be piped underground, and then again, generating over an acre of taxable land for the city. Briefly, some of the background on the site. It has been vacant and undeveloped for a significant amount of time. We think that it's due to a couple different factors. We think the lot configuration itself is one of the limiting factors. We also believe that the current future land use designation, as well as the zoning designation of office professional, may also have restricted some development proposals that we may have seen otherwise. So what the current property owner has done is really proposed a unique way of dealing with that challenge where they're looking to abandon that canal right-of-way as currently platted and incorporating it into their site design. Again, what that'll do is provide additional area that counts towards their development, requirements as far as total acreage for the site. It lessens the burden on the city as far as maintenance of that open canal area. The applicant has agreed to a perpetual easement for the canal itself and piping of that canal. So the city is pretty comfortable with the proposal as provided. Just for the record, the legal description has been provided in your backup material for tonight's meeting. The image you see before you is associated with the future land use map amendment. You can see the section on the top side of the screen here, and I'll highlight it with a mouse cursor. This is the current configuration, which is an office future land use designation. And what's currently being proposed is that this area will have a commercial future land use designation, which you can see the area just south also has that commercial designation. So we feel like it would be consistent. The image before you now is associated with the zoning map. The image on the top of the page is office professional, and what is currently proposed is an amendment to general commercial zoning. Again, that would be consistent with the property to the south. I'll touch upon some of the high points within the staff analysis. Within this project, there are 5 new buildings. We feel like the future land use map amendment and the zoning map amendment, if those are approved, then the project would be consistent with our requirements. We feel like there's been significant efforts to ensure compatibility with adjacent uses as well. All levels of service are currently available to the site: water, sewer, roadway, garbage collection, etc. There's a brand new landscape package that's proposed for this site, significantly in line with our overlay district for Blue Heron Boulevard, which we think you'd be pleased with. And parking and traffic is in line with all of the concurrency requirements. For the record, here's a copy of the site plan, which is also provided in your backup material. This is the configuration and layout of the design. This is east to west, and you can see the building footprints as proposed. And this is a copy of the landscape plan. And you can see the treatment on the south side of the project, which is along Blue Heron Boulevard. Pretty significant landscape treatment, as well as landscape buffer on the north side, adjacent to existing residential uses. Here are a few of the renderings that have been provided by the applicant. This would be the view from Blue Heron Boulevard. And this is the view from Blue Heron Boulevard at the center of the site. For the record, the elevations have been provided in the backup and are demonstrated before you. I believe there are 5 in total, 1 for each building. So what staff would like to do is go over some of the proposed condition of approval for each item. Of course, we'd want to hear public comments for each item separately, allow for public comments, and the board would have to provide guidance on each item individually as well. So staff recommendation for the abandonment request, which is AB-19-02. Excuse me. City staff is recommending that P&Z recommend approval to City Council for this canal right-of-way abandonment with the following conditions. First is the applicant shall provide a city access easement identical to the legal description of the city canal right-of-way abandonment area in order to ensure access in perpetuity. The second condition is following City Council approval and adoption of this abandonment ordinance, and prior to the city canal right-of-way abandonment becoming effective, the applicant shall provide to the city with a construction performance bond for 110% of the value of the cost to channelize or pipe and fill the existing city canal. The third condition is the applicant's responsible for any and all costs associated with channelization or piping of the existing city canal. The water management capacity of this newly piped canal shall be equal to or greater than the capacity of the existing canal. And the final design of the infrastructure improvement shall be approved by the city's Public Works Department. The applicant must also apply and be issued one or more city building permits prior to any site work commencing for channelization of the existing canal. The fourth condition is the applicant shall replat the city canal right-of-way abandonment area with the adjacent parcel known by PCN 5643422937000030 prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the location, and the replat shall include city access easement that was required as a condition of approval for the abandonment. So that concludes the recommended conditions for the abandonment. The recommendation for the future land use map amendment is that the city staff recommends Planning and Zoning Board recommend approval of the future land use map amendment to City Council from office to commercial. The next recommendation is associated with the zoning map amendment, and city staff is also recommending that the board recommend approval to City Council from an office professional designation to a general commercial designation. So we have multiple conditions associated with the site plan, which is SP-18-13. A few of the conditions are boilerplate conditions, which we use for all of our development orders. So the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth are all customary conditions. Number 7 is somewhat unique. It states the 3 concurrently processed ordinances for the abandonment, the future land use map amendment, and zoning map amendment must be adopted, approved, and become effective prior to the site plan approval becoming effective. So that's a timing condition for the project. Number 8 is the applicant shall consult with the Riviera Beach Police Department in order to incorporate one or more Internet Protocol, or IP, cameras within their site design for RBPD use. Number 9 is that the applicant shall replat the city canal right-of-way abandonment area with the adjacent parcel known by PCN 5643422937000030 prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the location. And the replat shall include the city access easement that was required as a condition of approval for the abandonment. Condition number 10 has to do with water management on site. I believe the applicant has already provided this documentation, but just for belt and suspenders, condition 10 is prior to the issuance of any city building permit, the applicant shall provide a drainage report sufficient to demonstrate compliance with the city and South Florida Water Management District regulations, specifically demonstrating compliance with City Comp Plan Infrastructure Element Policy 1.5.3, which is provided just for further information. And this information is in the staff report as well. So that concludes staff's presentation on the item. I know the applicant's present as well. If it pleases the board, I would like to provide an opportunity for the applicant to present.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon.
So, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you, Jeff. Members of the board, good evening. Josh Nichols for the record at Schmidt Nichols. I've also got the development team with us this evening. We've got the attorney for the project, Seth Bain. The client and owner of the property is here with us as well, Stu Hankin. And also Rob Rennebaum is the engineer of record, and he's going to be speaking as well today. Wanted to just start, I know that you've, Jeff, of course, did a great job as last time on, is this the right button to push? Okay, perfect. Yeah, it switched over, okay. So I will keep this very brief. I think you have a good understanding of kind of what the requests are and what the project is. So I'll keep that brief, and then we'll turn it over to Stuart Hankin for kind of an update on his task, which was to go out to the neighbors and see what their understanding was of the project and kind of just get some feedback there. So he's got some really good updates, so I'll move my side of it along. So again, the comprehensive plan amendment, the rezoning, all required in order to make this come to fruition. The site plan is about 31,000 square feet. And some of the uses that we're hoping to get in there, again, some first-class retail, restaurant, medical clinic, so kind of like an MD Now, something like that. I think there's a need for that in the area, so hoping to get one of those users in there. And then also the abandonment of the canal. So I think this is good just to show kind of a color rendering of the site plan. And so you can see, as Jeff discussed, oh, here we go. So you have the retail, restaurant, medical buildings kind of all fronting on Blue Heron. There was a recently adopted Blue Heron corridor plan. And so this was, correct me if I'm wrong, one of the first projects to kind of institute a lot of that streetscape design. So all the buildings were pushed up to the front. There's a meandering sidewalk that goes along all the frontage of the buildings. And then the landscaping was upgraded as well to kind of go with that motif along the frontage. So I think that it turned out to be a really good plan. I know you saw the renderings. I'll show that real quick as well. One thing that Stuart had gained in his meetings with the residents was that the home here on the western end would like nothing to be behind their home. So, which is good because they're on the end here, so it's not behind one of the buildings or anything like that. So it's next to the canal. So we would ask that, and we can work with staff between here and City Commission, because I know we're required a buffer along the perimeter, but maybe we can shift that landscape material outside of that window and create a view window there, so we're not impacting that, because it is a pleasure of one of the residents in that area. So we did want to honor that and bring that to the board's attention, that we would work with staff in between to come up with a solution there for them. Let me just quickly go to, and again, you saw these in Jeff's presentation, but again, just wanted to show you, we're really looking at a high-end design, a lot of glazing, which is a requirement of the corridor, and also the architectural treatment, splitting the buildings up so you don't have a large massing along the roadway, pulling those buildings up to the front. So I think the design came out really nice. Again, we've been in the process, well, not in the process, but in the design process for about 2 years, better part of that. The abandonment was a big part of it, so we really look forward to your support in kind of moving this forward. Just to kind of go over these, we talked about them last time, but some of the benefits to the community in terms of the estimated project costs, the jobs, and the tax revenue generation. So you saw those last time, same run through there. So with that, I'd like to bring up Stuart and kind of walk through some of his discussions with the adjacent property owners. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Evening.
Good evening.
Thank you again for the opportunity to come before you and discuss our project. I guess this is the third time we're talking about this. For some of you, maybe the second time, and for some of you, the first time. In our last meeting, it was abundantly clear that we needed to do some more community outreach to share our vision for the project and let the homeowners give the homeowners a chance to give us some direct feedback and for us to inform them about the plans for the project. So last Wednesday, I went door to door at 2 times, one at 12 o'clock and one at 5:30. Not everybody was home, but I think over 75% of the people I was able to talk to directly. There are 21 houses that buffer my land, of which 20 of them currently have a fence or bushes or some sort of buffer that they use as security for their house. And as Josh just spoke about, there is one that has no fence, has no bushes, has no buffer. And because of the way the project is laid out, we're able to keep that way, again, at the homeowner's request. There were 3 specific things that we got overwhelmingly positive support for, so just wanted to share that with you. First was the wall, 6-foot wall, barrier wall behind their houses. Again, I really wasn't sure how the people would receive it, but again, overwhelmingly positive response. The level of security that the wall would provide versus the fences that are there today, I get almost everybody was very happy about replacing what exists there with a 6-foot wall. The second was the canal. Again, I didn't have anybody say that they loved the canal or wanted the canal. The canal was a burden for most people, not safe, and a breeding ground for mosquitoes for times of the year. So that was number 2. And the third was new business and economic development. Virtually everyone saw that as a positive for themselves and the greater community. We did have conversations about concerns as well. One concern was that the construction of our project would in a way do damage to their project, or to their houses, excuse me. And that's completely false. There's no construction work that we're doing, whether it be the canal or the construction of the buildings, that is going to somehow vibrate the ground and crack their pipes or their foundation. It's just not going to happen. And we have a civil engineer here that's been working on the project for a few years already. That's just going to add a little bit to that. And really that was it. Happy to answer any questions. Again, I was very happy the response from the community. And yeah, look, very excited about the project. Look forward to vote, and thank you. I'm going to bring up Rob to briefly speak about the engineering impact, construction impact.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins.
Good evening. My name's Rob Runnebaum. I'm a registered professional engineer and the president of Simmons & White Engineers. Our office is just one exit down, 5 minutes from here at 45th Street and I-95. And I've been with Simmons & White for over 30 years. And I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of projects just like this. And in my experience, we've never had an adjacent homeowner or pipes or foundations cracked or pipes damaged with the type of construction that's anticipated here on this project. We've had some people say they've felt vibrations from projects, and humans are very sensitive to vibrations. And the type of construction techniques that are going to be used here with vibratory rollers are the same type of rollers that are used for house pad constructions. So the 21 houses that are adjacent to us, they weren't all built at the same time. One's built, and two's built, and then another one's built next door to it. For the filling of that house pad, the same type of equipment that's used to vibrate that house pad is going to be used on our project. And the thing to remember is we're not compacting 3 or 4 or 5 feet of fill at a time. It's layered in very thin layers. So the construction equipment can be less vibratory than things you see at heavy DOT construction or heavy bridge construction, where they're putting in sheet piles that, if you're not careful and you're not engineered correctly, they can cause some damage to existing structures. Now, I was told that there was some concern from members of the board and neighbors about the vibration, and I'm pretty good with this, but there's a local expert, a geotechnical engineer that I asked to meet with, and he came to my office, and he probably gave me more information than any of you are concerned in, but it's more technical and it has to do with DOT standards. for years, people would be, in the old days, people would complain about vibration and there was no real standards. So DOT actually created standards for this type of construction. And the variable is inches per second. And the DOT has a standard that they want us to keep our vibrations at 0.2 inches per second with a maximum of 0.5 inches per second. And he told me that to crack a foundation, to crack concrete, to crack a wall, or to settle pipes in nearby neighborhoods or under the residences, it takes in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 inches per second from the equipment. And that, he said, is severe pile driving, heavy-duty bridge construction type things. So what we're going to be doing here, compared to the DOT standards, compared to what could crack or could settle pipes, is like 35 to 50 times less intensive. So I don't think there's going to be any problem. We've never had a problem with this type of work, and we wanted to come and let you know the magnitude of the safety factor. We as engineers deal with safety factors of 2 or 3. Here it's 35 to 50 times less than what could cause damage to the neighbors. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have anything you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ronnebaum.
And again, just, I know we went on there for a bit, so we want to just open it up now to any questions you may have, so thank you.
Board,
Sure.
Mr. Newcomb.
Yes, I just want to I just want to make a comment and actually commend you guys for following through with the requests that were made last time. I was a little bit skeptical because I actually wanted to see if you were going to do anything like this. And just looking at the survey, this actually exceeded my expectations because I really liked the fact that you made notes and spoke about the conversations. I especially liked the fact that, it was one person you were able to sit there and just talk to them for 30 minutes, and that's important because I think when you're doing things like this is the community is impacted, and it's important that people know who's actually doing work. And I'm sure that you probably may have learned something from the community. So again, like I said, we always have to make decisions, but I definitely think this is a really great job.
Good job, Stuart.
Ms. Clark, you're recognized.
Yes, I think my colleague has expressed my sentiment exactly because I was very adamant to have some forum with the community to get their buy-in. To the engineer, and just for the viewing audience, I just want them to clearly understand that the board didn't necessarily have a problem with the interruption of pipes and the land settling and that sort of thing. It was unfortunately on those residents who had another engineering company, another vendor, who did a shoddy job of some other street repairs, and they were absolutely gun shy, thinking that they would see a replication of a job that was not done very well. So your engineer here was just really to clarify, to give a comfort level, to use this forum right now to get that message out. Plus, it's on record, too. I want to go to the wall design. I know at this point there is buy-in except for that one house on the corner. And I don't know if the architect has already, with that 6-foot wall, talked about the aesthetic of that. Sure, it can go up 6 feet, but did you get any feedback in terms of the aesthetic, or did you present aesthetic and the neighbor said thumbs up?
I don't mean to speak for Stu, but I don't think, did you talk specifically about the aesthetic? I think, well, we're required to have architectural consistency between the buildings and the wall. So that will be, of that same color scheme. The wall can't be, it's not going to be a fancy over the top ornate wall or anything, but it's gonna, you know, you have the columns and then the slats that kind of slip in there. So there's not a huge footer. It's a pretty sleek design, and it's going to be the same color scheme as the buildings.
And that's okay. I just want to make sure that the residents will not be surprised to say, you know what? For example, off of Australian, the walls that the city put in, I think it's Martin Luther King Boulevard over there, and the neighbors were really distraught when they eventually saw the wall. And they were just not happy because no one spoke to them. They expected a high wall. They got a really short wall. And I'm hoping that the lovely landscape kind of made up for it. And what I'm saying is, if I'm one of the homeowners and the wall goes up and I just want to look out my window, I just want to make sure I'm looking at something that makes me feel good when I go look in the morning or when I go to bed, that it looks okay. And that was really about it. It doesn't have to be ornate. I'm not saying that. Just that there is some level of expectation, because that's going to be the first thing they see when they wake up, probably the last thing they see when they go at night, and maybe it will be sleek and it looks great.
Yep, so what was explained was that it would be a 6-foot concrete wall. The wall will have stucco on both sides and be finished on both sides, and it will be aesthetically pleasing. That's really the short version of that. Nobody really expressed anything above and beyond requirements, but it'll definitely be consistent with the rest of the project. It'll look great, and it'll add to the back of their house for sure.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. You've clarified that. That's on record, so now they know what to expect.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board?
I have,
Mr. Hunt, you're recognized.
I'm sorry. I have a couple of observations. First of all, Mr. Rankin, I thank you again for taking the time and effort to do it, because it showed the value of having the real facts that we need to balance the judgment of the community. And while we want to listen to all of the opposing views, we also want to make sure we listen to the positive views as well. And I think you did a great job of summarizing everything. And I think it makes it a lot easier for the council to approve it as well, because it's not going to be a football tossed into their lap. Thank you.
Mr. Wiley, you're recognized.
Yes, excuse me, I'm a little under the weather today. Again, I kind of, express the same type of feelings that my colleagues have. Is thank you for coming and bringing this project to the city, because it's something I thought was well needed. Because like I said, I'm born and raised here, and as a little kid walking up and down Blue Heron, it was nothing never in that location. And finally, 50 years later, well, I'm lower than 50. 40 years. Yeah, 40 years later. That, now that something now is going to be there, because I was just making a joke earlier about, this is not Riviera Beach country. It needs to be Riviera Beach city. And it needs to have that kind of image. So thanks a lot for, like what he said, for coming in and talking to the residents on 23rd and actually getting their buy-in on it, even for the person on the corner. Because I know that person on that corner, and they kind of like to have that view of Blue Heron, look outside the house and see that, so I understand that. And thank you for making an adjustment for that. I have one thing, though. Do we think that the idea of, remember I talked about the driveway of going in from Blue Heron and the traffic study that we had on there? I'm still a little skeptical about the traffic not being able to have a turn in because of the amount of traffic during certain times of the day, to where it will slow down traffic coming down Blue Heron, especially going west, if that was an issue. So I know you can't really budge on that. You talked about, because I understand it's the design there, and it would kind of hurt the rest of the design of the building. But you're still gonna have my strong vote on that. But that was something that, to where I was wondering, did you do any more kind of the look in on that to kind of see if anything could be done?
You can go ahead.
So Josh will give you a technical response. My response, I had breakfast in PGA Commons this morning, and that's very similar site on PGA Boulevard, which has similar traffic patterns. And the entrance of PGA Commons is the same as we've proposed here. It's one long drive with no turn-in lane. So I've done the traffic studies, and I'm sure he will, expand on the requirements, but I just wanted to make that note to you. So,
Okay.
is there anything
Okay.
else you want to add?
Yeah, just to kind of restate sort of what we talked about last time, but I just want to make you feel comfortable. We do meet this is a DOT road, this section, right?
Right.
So we have approval from DOT on our driveways and with the intensity and the number of turns. So it does meet all those standards.
Okay.
It really, again, the shallowness of the site, if we start putting in turn lanes, really starts to
Right.
inhibit that ability to develop the site. So
Right.
luckily enough, we do meet all the standards by what we're showing as proposed.
All right, one more question. What's the time limit, specifically, what's the time limit on this project? Because to be honest with you, I would be excited to see it. I at least want to be around to be able to see it.
Going somewhere?
You never know, man, it's just.
You're not gonna beat me.
Got another 50 years.
So obviously, depending on permitting but we'd like to get construction going before the end of the year, if that's possible. So we're not going to sit on it.
Well, so what's the expectation of the finish date?
Okay. So fourth quarter 2021?
That's awesome, all right.
You'll make it to then. I know. I have faith. I have faith.
You're not going anywhere.
Try not to. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Chair, I have another question.
Ms. Clark.
This may be directed more at Mr. Gagnon. We have a lot here of digits with the traffic study. And I was a little bit glazed over looking at all of that because I do have a full-time job. So my question is, we have, I believe it's Australian, and we have Congress, in which the project is going to develop. And the criteria for the traffic has been met. And my question is, it's just focusing on the traffic patterns between that Australian and Congress where this project is. But did the DOT look at Riviera Beach, Blue Herring in aggregate to say that we have these projects that are on Singer Island and Blue Herring that we're looking at developing? And those individuals, like I think it is a 30-story-foot hotel parking lot that's going to be on Singer Island, Blue Herring. And that traffic flow, any time of the day, has to come down to where this project will be to get to I-95 and go to West Palm Beach Airport, for example, because I don't think they're going to traverse back the other way and cut through to Jupiter. So my question is, because of that future traffic based upon those projects, what is that going to do to this particular section of traffic where it is Australian Congress where this is?
I can jump in here, I think, and Jeff can add anything that I may miss. But so basically, we look at the background traffic. So anything that's approved within a sphere of influence, basically, is looked at and is evaluated in the traffic study. So any projects that are on the books, and again, the county, so not just DOT, but the county also reviews for traffic performance standards, and then the city also reviews it. So you have 3 different agencies that are reviewing it. But yes, all the background traffic is, so, and I mean by background is any projects that are on the books. They have to actually be on the books, so they can't be just in the pipeline totally, unless they're already reviewed by DOT or the county. But otherwise, and then we look at all the road networks that do have an impact on the project and where these trips are going throughout the day. So all that is evaluated in the traffic study.
Okay, thanks. I think it's a valid question.
Absolutely.
Not that the developer has a lot to do with it, but it falls upon Department of Transportation and knowing what we have going on as a city in the bigger picture in the future and have that futuristic look so that we are managing that traffic flow and we don't end up, not that we're going to end up like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, or Atlanta, or any Chicago for that example, but for a small town, new traffic coming through should be considered because it would have an impact. But go ahead, Mr. Gagnon.
Yeah, so if you can think of it as there's a pot that has been established as far as total number of trips available. So that's the metric that's used for any sort of traffic calculation. So as, I think your real point is, as we're experiencing more growth, how do we ensure that we're, staying within the limitations that are provided within the roadway itself? And as new projects come in and seek concurrency approval and seek approval from either FDOT or the county, they're given a placeholder, for lack of a better term, and those trips that are dedicated to the project are reserved for them until either a date certain that's specified within the concurrency letter that's provided, or until the project is really comes to fruition and built out. So if we had an unfortunate circumstance where a project was approved and went through the process and reserved that capacity and then just didn't come to fruition for whatever reason and wasn't built, then those trips would go back into the pool and available for other development teams. But so long as they have an active development order, those trips are reserved for that development.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Shepherd, you're recognized.
as I listen to my colleagues talking, we have to remember one thing. Riviera Beach is growing. It's growing fast now with all the construction, and I want to make it clear, very clear, that we're growing, and we have to accept the roads being torn up, and the buildings are growing, and I'm just ecstatic this company is here. And I think that this company is going to make a statement that the city of Riviera Beach is growing. I think you're moving in the right direction, and I'm sure right there it's going to be stagnated with the schools there and Barracuda Bay. It's going to be stagnated. The fire department is coming, so when I go out and take a drive and I want to go somewhere, I know I have to leave at least 20 minutes or an hour early. So my grandchildren say I drive 20 miles an hour. And I know I'm a little slow, but I get there. And so with this project coming in Blue Heron, I used to live right there on Blue Heron. And certain times of the day, I'll tell you the traffic is horrible. So I want to look at the good side. And I want to say my city is growing. And I know for a fact buildings are coming with the new, I'm sorry, my phone. With the new buildings that's coming on the island, I'm sure that we have to brace ourselves for the future. I'm bracing myself for the future of Riviera Beach. My parents were born and raised here, but moved to Detroit. And I'll be honest with you, I've been here a little over 30 years, and it's been the same. Nothing's been going up until now. And that corner, I always wondered, who owned that corner? Who owned that corner? And now you're sitting in our chamber saying this is your project. And I hope people take a good look at you and say, Riviera Beach is moving on. With that, I thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weiland, you're
Yeah, so
recognized.
one more question. I know you spoke, I know you can't control, I guess, the businesses when everything gets set up, all the businesses going in. But he spoke of like an MD Now, like a medical center or something like that. Is it any kind of negotiations with any company or any companies at this moment who possibly may be coming into that location? Because I think that'd be a great, if an MD Now comes in, that would be great. Because I know a lot of people in that area who travel to Palm Beach Gardens or either West Palm Beach or Palm Beach Lakes just to get medical attention. And for something to be right there in your neighborhood would be awesome if it's a possibility that we can get that there.
They're definitely on my short list of businesses I think would be perfect there, but I can't start
Can't promise it,
negotiations
right.
until I have approvals. Nobody's willing to have discussion until I say, here's the project, here are the
Got it.
approvals, here's what's coming.
Got it. One more question for
Yep.
you. Are you still working with the guy, the young man at the storage building to try to make the buildings similar? I know as far as paint, because I know
The only
that-
time I ever met him was sitting here, and we never had a discussion on coordinating that in any way.
Right, sort of consistent to where it makes it look like the little city feel.
Yeah.
You know, so we talked about that last meeting, but that's-
The good thing is they're both our clients, so we can make
yeah,
that connection
exactly,
and look.
Oh,
exactly.
they are?
yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
The
good.
storage facility across the street and obviously this one. Yes.
That sounds even better.
Yeah, so we can try to coordinate
Make it
that.
look
Yeah. At least so
exactly.
they don't clash, but
Exactly.
I can't guarantee that they'll be the same color, but at least that they won't clash.
Exactly.
We can try to coordinate
Thank
that.
you again,
absolutely.
sir. Thank you.
Chair, just a question for you. Are questions kind of open to get them out in the open right now, or just ask them at the appropriate time in the rest of the presentation?
Right now, we can get as many questions out as we need to from the board,
Okay. I wanted to just ask.
as long as it's within topic.
It's a topic.
Okay, very well.
Launching this project. Okay. To the owner of the land, I was looking at all of the documentation, so I want to understand who actually owns the land. I'm looking at a warranty deed. Is it your company, or do you have a consortium of investors, and the title is truly going to that entity, or is it within your ownership? Because if I'm understanding, once we do the abandonment of the canal, that becomes real property that follows the history of the parcel number. Even if you were to sell a property and flip it, that canal becomes, real property. And I'm just trying to understand, in
Sure.
this documentation that's going to be recorded,
Sure.
is it, under your ownership or different
Yep. So
LLC, or for
the
example?
LLC is BLP Blue Heron LLC. I am the owner and manager of that LLC. I have one investor who's a silent partner that puts up money along with me, but I'm 100% the decision maker and the person that's running the project.
Okay, so the real property is up under your purview?
Correct.
That's what I'm asking?
Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. And one last question. Mr. Gagnon showed us a colorful picture of the view of the land pointing towards I-95, for example, and there was that part of the canal. I just wanted to get an understanding, and it might be that total end piece that had the tunnel, that canal, the big hole. Are you covering over, making that underground too, or is that just going to remain as is?
It's going to remain as is.
Oh, it's going to remain as is? Oh, okay. All right. Not that it, I'm not an engineer, so I didn't know if you were just going to end up encasing that as well and making that part of it.
Yeah, this
But you're just
picture is a
gonna
good
leave it as is.
representation of what our plan is.
Okay. All right, I just wanted clarity on it,
Yep.
if it was coming in or if it was just going to remain as is. Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Moving on, we have
Excuse me,
one,
Mr. Chair, one quick second. I just needed
Absolutely.
to make sure that that we agreed to the conditions of approval. I missed that at the end of the presentation, so we just wanted to make sure that for the record, we're in agreement with the conditions of approval for all 4 of the applications. Thank you.
thank you. Jeff, I also believe that there was in the last meeting, there was a talk about having the department speak about this. Is that true? About any of the from any of the different police departments or fire departments about the buildings?
You mean a backup
You don't,
of the fire department and?
yes.
We haven't received any additional concerns. They were part of the site plan and project review process.
So everything is approved from all of our
Yeah,
internal
one of
departments?
the items, one of the comments associated with police has to do with some of the camera systems that they would like to have access to, and they want to work with the development team, an IP-based camera system.
And then we have no update from them there, as long as the applicant is willing to work with the police department. We made the recommendations as per the,
Yes, sir. And from a fire standpoint, of course, when the project comes in for building permit, all of the plans would have to be up to date for all the fire code approvals and building code requirements. And that typically is fire department's main concern, just to ensure that all the fire safety is up to current code.
very well, thank you. Moving on, I guess we would move on to public comments regarding this before we move forward. We have one card here from Claudia Anthony that would like to discuss items A through D.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Claudine Anthony. I am the property owner that's at the west end of the project who did not want a wall behind her home, or should I say our home, as I am married, because I do enjoy the view of Blue Heron in the morning and at night. I just want to say that it's unfortunate that Ms. Hubbard was unable to be here this evening, but I do want to thank Mr. Hankin for coming by my office as well as my home last week. He did not get the opportunity to speak with me, but he did speak with my husband to advise the wall would not be behind our home, nor will the canal be filled behind our home. Ms. Harris Clark asked about the piping that's over there by my home. That is city-owned property. That's part of our utility special district, which Ms. Clark is the possible reason why it will not be bothered, which also may lend to why the canal will not be fenced, will not be filled on that end, because not only do you have that pipe in there, but you have a lift and a pump station that is there. I moved there. I don't have to worry about a smell that usually comes from those things, okay? However, I took the privilege of driving down Blue Heron and through other thoroughfares of the city to see what other neighborhoods were abutted by businesses, and to my surprise, there were not many, if any. So the question becomes, why here? Mr. Wiley, I understand that you've been wondering what was going to be built there because of what you've seen through the years. At the last meeting when this item was discussed, according to the developer, the impact would only be on approximately 25 property owners and or renters. I want to inform the developer whether the number is 25, 2,500, or 25,000. We, the residents of this city on 23rd Street, are stakeholders just like anyone else, and our dollars do matter. I made comments on safety concerns, noise concern during construction, possible damage to residential infrastructure. But I did not bring to your attention the effect of the city's fragile infrastructure, as the lift and pump stations in that area has issues currently with its current utilization. What about the effect of the utility vehicles being able to access homes between the fencing of the properties and the barrier wall? Better yet, how will the construction equipment access the site? Do they plan on passing through on the west end, which means driving on my property because you can't access from the east side? How will this project affect property values once completed or once neglected? No, I do not have confidence in the property being properly maintained as time goes by. You have heard my comments. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Anthony.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Shepherd?
I was under the understanding that everybody in that neighborhood approved that. I'm kind of stunned to hear Mr. Anthony talk about it. Did it affect anybody else? Did you get any statements from anyone else? This is the first I've heard of it, and I got friends in that area, and I haven't heard them talk about it, not at all.
Yep, so there were 2 public comments last time of people that were not excited about the project. Ms. Hubbard was the other person. But speaking to everybody else directly, they responded very positively. And, you know, we're able to make the consideration, you know, to keep the project away from the house all the way to the west. So we didn't take a vote. We didn't ask anybody to sign anything. We let everybody know that we would be here tonight presenting, and everybody had the opportunity to, you know, come in opposition. And again, you know, we have one person that I'm not sure if that was all positive or all negative, but yeah, that's the response. The summary that's provided in your packet was every discussion I had with the people there. So,
Well, she brought it up, since Ms. Anthony brought it up, how will you get the easement to her property to work on this project?
yeah, we have access directly from Blue Heron, so we don't need to come from.
You don't need to go through her property?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, because I wouldn't
No.
want to upset her.
No, today there is no access through there. And people come and service the property. They come in through Blue Heron Boulevard right now. They just kind of pull up on the sidewalk. So there won't be any need for access through any part of 23rd Street.
How did you access the opinions? I've been out sick for a while,
Yep.
so I asked these questions. What did you do? Put door knockers, or you just
I
went?
literally knocked on the doors. Yep, and for everyone that was home, we just had a conversation. Some people had heard about it and wanted to talk about it. Some people wanted to explain their support. Some people had some questions about what the construction would be like, and I, shared that with them, and I showed them pictures of what it would look like. I wrote them a letter. I gave them my personal cell phone number. I've received 2 calls since then, both positive. So everybody was left with my letter, pictures, and my business card with my personal cell phone on it.
How many houses did you go to?
There were 21. I knocked on. There were 16 homeowners. Of the 21, there were 5 investors. I didn't knock on the investor doors. I knocked on the homeowner doors. And again, there's a summary of my conversations with all of the homeowners.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
I didn't get that now. They sent me. a
All of the
packet.
detail is here in the packet that the staff prepared for us, as well as the developer and his team articulating even further. I want to have this question directed to Mr. Gagnon, just based upon Ms. Anthony's question, and this is something that the developer may not know, but we should. And she was pointing out the fragileness of our infrastructure because we as a city just have bad piping, if you will, and it's fragile. So what she's asking is, was that taken into consideration when the development happens, and if anything were to happen to, if you will, the water pipes? Because I've experienced that myself with something as much as just walking on the ground, and I ended up with a $500, $600 problem, and that was something that's the city's issue because the pipes are so old. But yet and still, when you have a developer coming in, they may not know how fragile it is, but the residents want to know. They don't want to see a problem, and if there is a problem, maybe it falls upon us as a city. I think that's what she's asking. If I'm wrong, Ms. Anthony, please correct me, but I want to make sure that that is addressed because that's something that's not here in the packet. effort that he did to go door to door, all of that's here, and he spoke about that. I'm clear on that. That's good. It's the infrastructure, which maybe falls more in our lap as a city to address the residents' concern.
So if the project receives approval and moves forward where they receive a development order from the city council, when they come in for a city building permit, that information in that packet is routed to each reviewing department and division. So one of those divisions is our utility district. So they're definitely aware of where their lift stations are and if there's any concerns associated with some of the construction or abandonment of the easement and piping of that canal. If they feel like there's any sort of conflict or concern, that's their true opportunity to see the complete development plans, to make any comments or amendments that they see fit. If there's any concern or issue that does require additional resolution or another meeting, they have the option of really providing a request for additional information to the applicant or any other comments that they have. And the project can't proceed until that building permit application is approved by each department or division. So the utility department, the utility division, or the district would have to approve any building permit application that's submitted to the city prior to any dirt being turned whatsoever.
And I'm just hoping that that answers Mrs. Anthony's question as a resident, which is what I'm trying to get at. And if it doesn't, I think she can speak for herself.
Very well. Moving on, we have another public comment from Marcy Selver. Okay. Yeah. Ms. Selver is looking to make comments regarding B through D. So I don't see why we couldn't vote, or if there was a motion out there for item A.
I move that we adopt and approve item A on the agenda.
Second.
I believe that was motion by Mr. Hunter and seconded by Mr. Gallen. Roll call?
Margaret Shepherd,
Yes.
William Wiley,
Yes.
Stephen Hunt,
Yes.
James Gallen,
Yes.
Anthony Brown,
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark,
Yes.
Moeti Nube,
Yes.
John Gustafson.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Moving on.
Thank you very
for-
much. Thank you.
Very well. Ms. Selver? You'd like to make comments regarding items B through D?
Good evening. My name is Mercy Selver, and I'm a resident on West 23rd Street. I've been there about 35 years. Ms. Claudine happens to be my neighbor. And my concern, well, I want to thank Mr. Stewart. He did come by the home. I have a home daycare. At the time he came, it was like noontime, and that's crunch time for me, so I really didn't have time to talk with him. I maybe spoken maybe 1 or less than 2 minutes because I didn't have time because of my children. But I was concerned about the canal behind my house, and he was saying that the canal was going to remain as is, that my home would not be impacted. Because again, I was concerned about the impact of them filling in that canal would have on my home. And he was saying that it would have no impact, that it was going to be left as is. So I just want to make it clear, I've heard all of the civil engineers and all that. I'm not familiar with all the technical terms or what have you, but the only thing I want to say is, like, I have been there for 35 years, and there's a lot of other people in our neighborhood that's been there a very long time, and they're a senior citizen. A lot of them don't drive at night, you know, they have difficulty getting around. But I'm concerned about the damages that might happen to my home. I know the engineer was saying it was gonna be very minimum, but in the event, you know, I take pride in my home, I put a lot of money in there, always doing upgrades to make my home look beautiful, and I want it to remain that way. I am a retiree, and this is a second career for me, but I wanna make sure that my property is not impacted by all of this drilling and stuff like that. And if it is damaged, because there's nothing wrong with my home right now, but in the event, because of that other construction that we had, I mean, it was terrible. All of the vibrations, and I don't want, you know, I know business has to go on. I'm for growth and development because I know it brings in jobs. And I just want to make sure, again, if something does happen, that I don't have to come out of my pocket, or my neighbors don't have to come out of their pockets to get this done, to get these repairs done. And as far as the traffic and things that are concerned, right now, there's already a problem on West Blue Heron Boulevard when you're trying to get from turn from Blue Heron to R.J. Henley Boulevard, getting across there, it's terrible. You know, you have to be very, very careful. Your car almost have to be in the road to see around the corner to get through Avenue R. And there's going to be accidents and things like that, so we need to make sure that we have the traffic control or whoever responsible for that doesn't occur. And I saw the beautiful designs, you know, all this looked good. And I pray that if it is approved, that we keep this design and it doesn't look like what we're looking at across the city, across Blue Heron right now. When you look at all those things, they got every funeral homes over there, they got some of everything there. And I just don't want, you know, this look good, but hold them to this. You know, and as far, we didn't even talk about the wall, but if a wall goes up, I don't want a big white wall behind my home. I want it to look nice because I put a lot of money in my home to make it look nice. So whenever if you have to put the wall up there, make it look presentable, maybe put some flowers on there, do whatever. So it is pretty. When you look at it, you want to see that. But just make sure that they're held accountable and that, you know, like he was saying, there's going to be very minimum. You know, people say anything to get what they want done, but just hold people accountable to it. And I just don't want no damage to my property, my neighbor's property, because we don't have money like that. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Gown.
Jeff, I have a question about that turn that she's talking about. Those trees or hedges in the middle of the road when you get ready to make that left-hand turn on Henley. Is there any way that they can take that shrubbery down or cut that one tree down that's right there as you're making that left-hand turn? Because you really cannot see the traffic coming. You have to pull out far enough to where you can see that traffic coming.
So this is within the landscape median in the roadway?
Yes.
I think we can absolutely have that conversation with DOT. A lot of those landscape packages that they put in are to FDOT standards, but if there's any sort of line of sight issue where view for traffic or drivers is blocked, then we definitely want to ensure that it's open and accessible.
It's terrible. It really is, because you have to pull out quite a ways to really make sure that there's no traffic coming.
Can we meet after the meeting tonight and you can pinpoint the exact location so I can make sure we can follow up on it?
Okay.
Moving forward, do we have a motion for item B?
I move that we accept and approve item B on the agenda.
Second.
The motion was by Mr. Hunt and seconded by Mr. Wiley. Roll call?
Margaret Shepherd,
Yes.
William Wiley,
Yes.
Stephen Hunt,
Yes?
James Gallen,
Yes.
Anthony Brown,
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark,
Yes.
John Gustafson.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Moving forward, item C, is there a motion?
I so move to approve item C, and
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Hunt and a second from Mr. Gallen. Roll call?
Margaret Shepherd,
Yes.
William Wiley,
Yes.
Stephen Hunt,
yes.
James Gallen,
Yes.
Anthony Brown,
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark,
Yes.
John Gustafson.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
And finally, under item 7, letter D, do we have a motion?
I move that we approve item D as submitted.
And I second.
I
Margaret
believe-
I'm sorry.
I believe that was a motion for Mr. Gallen and a second for Mr. Hunt. Roll call?
Margaret Shepherd,
Yes.
William Wiley,
Yes.
Stephen Hunt,
Yes.
James Gallen,
Yes.
Anthony Brown,
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark,
Yes.
John Gustafson.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Moving forward, item 8, new business.
Thank you, Chair. So we have one item on tonight's agenda under new business. For the record, it is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending City Code of Ordinance, Chapter 31, zoning, Article 1 in general, Section 31-1, definitions, by adding a definition for drive-up or drive-through facility, a definition for restaurant excluding drive-through, and a definition for restaurant, drive-through, drive-in, and amending Chapter 31, zoning, Article 6, supplemental district regulations, Section 31-551, principal arterial design standards overlay, by amending the location criteria for developments with drive-up facilities, by deleting the existing 500-foot separation requirement and requiring special exception approval for drive-up facilities, and providing for conflict, severability, and codification, and providing for an effective date. At this point in time, I would like to ask our senior planner, Ms. Ann DeVoe, to provide the board with a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Good evening. Right here. Good evening, Planning and Zoning Board members. Ann DeVoe, Senior Planner, Development Services.
Good evening.
Good evening.
One moment, please.
Just put new batteries in it. There we go. Just press this harder.
So tonight, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 31, zoning, Article 1 in general, Section 31-1, definitions, by adding a definition for drive-up, drive-through facility, a definition for restaurant excluding drive-through, and a definition for a restaurant drive-through, drive-in, and amending Chapter 31 zoning, Article 6 supplemental district regulations, Section 31-551, principal arterial design standards overlay, by amending the location criteria for developments with drive-up facilities, by deleting the existing 500-foot separation requirement and requiring special exception approval for drive-up facilities, and providing for conflicts, severability, and codification, and providing for an effective date. Before you tonight is the applicant and property owner, Riviera Partners, LLC. The authorized agent is Hope Calhoun for Dunay, Miskell, and Backman LLP. The request is, on behalf of the applicant, is to amend the City Code of Ordinances to add definition for drive-up facility, as well as amend the location criteria for developments with drive-up facilities by deleting the existing 500-foot separation requirement and requiring special exception approval for drive-up facilities within the principal ulterior design standards overlay. The amendment is global and it is not site-specific. A little of the background and analysis. The applicant purchased the vacant parcel identified by parcel control number 56-43-40-30-37-003-0000, located on Blue Heron Boulevard on May 22nd, 2018, with the intent to develop the property for an end user. The applicant has been unable to find a tenant for this commercial space, and therefore they desire to develop the parcel with a drive-through, and it's likely a restaurant. The parcel is a little less than an acre, 0.88.19 acres. The zoning designation is general commercial. The future land use is commercial. And it is within the overlay, the principal ulterior design standards overlay. It is situated in the Wedgewood Center replat number 1 subdivision along the 1700 block on West Blue Heron Boulevard. And it is adjacent to Taco Bell, which is a drive-through restaurant facility. Palm Beach County records and city records have revealed no prior development to the parcel. The city's principal ulterior design standards overlay regulations was originally approved by ordinance number 2833 in 1999. It was amended January 4th, 2017 by ordinance number 4091, amended again May 2nd, 2018 by ordinance number 4110, and it is codified in the city's land development regulations. Now, ordinance number 4110 addressed a moratorium that was enacted by ordinance number 4091, which limited the filing and receiving of site plan applications along Broadway, US 1, and Blue Heron Boulevard development corridors to allow city staff time to evaluate and propose new amendments pertaining to the corridors. The purpose and intent of the overlay was to promote consistent and compatible development and redevelopment within the city's primary roadway corridors. Now, the Riviera Beach principal ulterior overlay is now associated with the properties fronting on any of the following roads in the city. And there are 8 of them: Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, President Barack Obama Highway, Blue Heron Boulevard, Broadway, US Highway number 1, 13th Street, Military Trail, Congress Avenue, and Australian Avenue. Now, the city's overlay code currently prohibits drive-up facilities to be located within 500 feet of an existing drive-up facility located on the same side of a designated ulterior road. And it permits existing drive-up facilities located closer than 500 feet to be improved or upgraded with conditions. The proposed zoning text amendment to delete the 500-foot separation requirement for drive-up or drive-through facilities may create the potential for adverse impacts to the balance of uses along these roadway corridors. From a planning aspect, restricting the number of drive-through restaurant facilities within a community may be beneficial to the community environmentally and socially. In summary, creating definitions for drive-up, drive-through facility, restaurant excluding drive-through, and restaurant drive-through, drive-in are necessary city code improvements. We currently don't have definitions outlined in the code for those. The request to modify the existing 500-foot separation requirement for drive-through facilities could result in both positive and negative community impacts. The proposed new code definition, the applicant proposal you will see there, and staff's recommendation, which is drive-up, drive-through facility means any place of business or premises which serves, sells, or otherwise makes available its goods or services directly to customers situated in motor vehicles. Restaurant, excluding drive-through, means an establishment where the principal business is the sale of food in a ready-to-consume state to persons who are seated within the principal building, seated outside on the premises, or for carry-out. And restaurant, drive-through, drive-in means an establishment where the principal business is the sale of food in a ready-to-consume state to customers within the establishment and directly to customers on the premises situated in motor vehicles. Section 31-551, Principal Ulterior Design Standards Overlay. The location criteria for developments with drive-up facilities. And what you see before you is the existing code, and the changes are the deletions that the applicant is proposing. No drive-up facility. Number one, no drive-up facilities may be located along a principal ulterior roadway unless approved in accordance with Special Exception Section 31-61 of the City Code, and only in those zoning districts which currently permit drive-up facilities by right or special exception. And number two would be deleted. Staff conclusion, the city staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Board review the information that has been presented and to provide a recommendation to the City Council. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can start at the other end or whichever way you want to go.
I just have a question.
Ms. Clark, you're recognized.
As we discussed this, can we have the picture that's in our deck here of the property that we're talking about? So as we're discussing it, we have a visual.
This is This is a publicly initiated amendment, and the applicant will have that information for you because it
This
is
applies to
a
everything
global.
throughout the city.
Yeah, so if I may, the applicant would also like to present information to the board for your review and consideration.
Absolutely. Before we go into questions, let's hear from the applicant.
Sure.
Thank you. And just for the record, the ordinance itself would have what we would call a global impact. So it would potentially impact any parcel that's fronting one of our principal arterial roadway corridors. However, the applicant, and Ms. Calhoun can probably explain this in greater detail, the applicant is looking to amend the code in order to facilitate redevelopment of a particular site. However, again, this amendment would have a global impact.
Right, I get that it's global, but the example in its globalness will give everybody a visual. That's what I was requesting.
Yeah, let's hear from the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Hope Calhoun, land development attorney here tonight on behalf of Riviera Partners. And so, as was already stated, the impact potentially of what we are proposing is global. However, the reason we're bringing it forward is for our particular parcel and the uniqueness of our parcel. A couple of things I think that are important before and I'm going to put the visual up, I promise.
Thank you.
A couple of things just to keep in mind with regard to the globalness of this is that we are not asking that drive-through facilities just be permitted outright by right. They still have to be permitted through the special exception process. So this board would see and have the ability still to approve the location and appropriateness of a drive-through facility. But again, what's driving this particular application, I use this one, right? Thank you. What's driving this particular application is the configuration of this particular parcel. And we've been at this for probably over a year with planning staff and figuring out how can we accommodate our need in a way that I guess everyone can still have control over. So this is the project location, the one that my particular client is impacted by. You can see it's there just as a point of reference. The highway, I-95 is to our west. This particular pad, you'll know, again, directly on Blue Heron, there's an O'Reilly's Auto Parts store, there's a Taco Bell, and then there's the vacant parcel. Back in 2014, the prior owner of the parcel got, I'm going to call it a master plan approved for this all three lots. That master plan anticipated retail uses on all three parcels. I wasn't a part of that. I wasn't here then, but I would assume that at that time, that particular owner had a vision of what he thought he could bring to the property and to all three parcels. Again, I wasn't involved. I'm just making assumptions that he thought that if he had, again, those spaces, he would have the ability to add a retail component on the last one. What I can tell you is that I have, since becoming involved with this property, and actually prior to this owner, I had a few meetings with the city about different restaurant users on this property, and none of them came to fruition. The first one I'm going to tell you about, I was not involved in, but I understand the prior owner tried to get a Zaxby's on this location, and for whatever reason, that didn't work out. You guys are all familiar with Zaxby's, so there's one here. So that didn't work out. I became involved in a use that you're probably not going to like, and you're happy didn't go forward. You don't have to comment, but it was a Checkers. And that didn't go forward, and that obviously needed a drive-through component. You never saw it. We just had internal conversations with staff, and it just didn't go forward for various reasons. You'll note, I think this was already presented, the parcel size is less than an acre. It's 0.88 eighths of an acre, so not even quite an acre. So it's a very small parcel. And of that parcel size, the 0.8, only approximately 0.6, 0.7 acres are actually buildable once you, because we can't build on that green space behind us, and once you take out setbacks and everything else, that still leaves us with less than an acre to build on. You already know what the text amendment is. Ooh, not sure what happened there. What the language is, rather, that we're proposing. Again, this is just another visual showing the site a little closer up, if that's correct English. The one thing about this particular corridor and our particular parcel is that it's very auto-oriented, right? So I think it was mentioned in the last presentation, Blue Heron is a highly traveled corridor. It's one of the main arterial roads in the city. And so, in this context and along this roadway, a use like we're requesting that allows a drive-through is really conducive and compatible with the stage that's already been set along Blue Heron. One of the objectives, or a couple of rather, the objectives, as stated previously by Mr. Vo in this particular code section, is that uses along this corridor, Blue Heron, should be compatible with other permitted uses in the same district, and things should be developed in a consistent and harmonious manner. So we believe that to allow a drive-through on our particular parcel does that. I know everybody doesn't like to see
the fast food that's being depicted here. You can see the McDonald's and the Wendy's, but that's the kind of the tone that's been set along Blue Heron, at least in this particular section of Blue Heron. One thing I want to point out also is that my client, and I'm just gonna go backwards actually. One thing I want to point out also is that my client has tried to speak with not just fast food developers, but people that have what we call now fast casual developers. Restaurants, I shouldn't say developers, fast casual restaurants. So a Zaxby's is a fast casual. It provides you with the opportunity to either eat inside, or if you're driving along or you want to go home or you're getting a quick dinner, you can go through the drive-through, not just sit inside. At one point, Captain D's, I believe, was interested in this site, but as the drive-through is not permitted because of the existing, we couldn't get the Captain D's, and that deal fell apart. So what this amendment would allow would allow my client to be able to take the property out to market and maybe say to people now, look, it's not a home run, but at least it's not prohibited at this point, and that creates a greater opportunity for more potential users to come and utilize the site. And then very quickly, the existing, these regulations are taken from the existing city code. A full-service restaurant, the first thing actually, the size of the buildings is not from the city code, the parking regulations are. So a full-service restaurant is generally about, you see, 4,000 to 9,000 square feet. That requires a lot size of 1 to 2 acres. That's a sit-down restaurant. I already explained, we don't have that. So for our parcel, we couldn't build you a full-service restaurant. A fast food restaurant, building square footage typically 2,000 to 4,000 square feet with a lot size of 0.5 to 1.5 acres. Again, we are 0.8 acres. So even to get what we're calling the fast casual restaurant, it's going to take some creative designing to be able to allow it. But you can see one of the things that makes it more difficult is the required parking, because everybody just thinks of the building, but we forget about the parking, even when we're talking about fast casual. Because if you're going to a Captain D's, or you're going to a Zaxby's, or you're going to a Chipotle or anything like that, and you want to go in, you have to park. That's 13 to 27 spaces for a fast food restaurant, and a full-service sit-down restaurant is 27 to 60 spaces. We are, again, less than an acre, so we just don't have the space to do it. And again, just as a reminder, a restaurant, a parcel, this size, a drive-through facility, if it's permitted here, still has to go through the special exception process. So it's not a slam dunk. It's not a by right use. We would ask that you would look at this request favorably. The other definitions that were proposed were really we worked with the city and my words, cleaned up, because some definitions were not in the code, so we agreed to include them with our application. So we would ask that you would approve all of the language that we are requesting tonight. I'm here with my client. We are happy to answer any questions should you have them. Thank you for your time. And I'll put the site back up so you can look at it while you're discussing.
Ms. Nukin.
You said Zaxby's and my ears perked up. Is that still a possibility as Zaxby's?
Today, no, because drive-through is not permitted.
But if it was to get approved, would it still be a possibility?
I don't know right now, to be perfectly honest, because they won't know who could come here until they know what happens. So what would happen tonight, after tonight rather, assuming this is sent forward with a positive recommendation, we'd go to City Commission, hopefully with a positive recommendation, hopefully they would approve it. Then my clients would go back out to market and say, guess what we got? And they would see who comes to the table.
Okay. I just want to say to the board, I don't know if you guys have Zaxby's, but we need that. I drive all the way down to Okeechobee, all the way out west, just to get some of that chicken. So if we can get one here, what do I have to do?
I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen.
I know. I understand.
I don't want anybody to say, you said we're going to get a Zaxby's, but I'm not saying that.
Make it happen.
I'll do my best. We'll do our best.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Mr. Hunt.
Actually, this is not just a question, but it's to more Mr. Gagnon. I'm a little frustrated with the definitions because they seem to fog things up a little bit about the distinction between drive up and drive through. And we can talk about it afterwards if you want and things of that sort, because I think that it needs a little bit more cleanup than you referred to. Here would be my concern. The 500-foot separation seems grossly unrealistic. But if we look at the property there, a drive-through would be traffic going right up to essentially to the fence of the property owners on the Blue Heron side of or the east side of that property line. And if I were one of those property owners, I would be quite concerned about the prospect of folks with blaring music or loud mufflers or hot rodding kinds of things going through the drive-through. If it was a drive up, it would be less likely to cause problems on that side because you could build the restaurant closer to the property line or to the houses and have the traffic on the other side. But I still think we need a little bit more work to clarify the definitions and to be quite clear that we're distinguishing between three different classes. One is the drive up. Secondly is the drive through, and thirdly is the combination of both of those.
I know you weren't asking me, and I know Mr. Gagnon's going to speak, but I think a large part of, to address your concern would be where the speakers and the box are placed through the site planning process. But I understand your point.
Well, I'm sure we've all heard some folks who choose not to use regular mufflers and things of that sort, and if they're idling there at 10 o'clock to get their sandwich, that can become a serious problem for anybody living in that property. So my concern is twofold. One is to clarify the terms so that we're not using exclusion of the, I think the problem is it's excluding drive-through adds a degree of fog. So what I would propose would be a drive-up and drive-through, a drive-up and a drive-through only. And that would distinguish each of those three categories and make it a little bit simpler to
Yeah. So when staff was looking in our current definition section, we were trying to use this as an opportunity to add specific definitions because we were finding that we were lacking in certain areas. So the three different items that are attempted to be defined, the first isn't necessarily associated with a restaurant use.
Okay,
so
that's fine.
that could be for a bank or another a pharmacy maybe would have a drive-up window. And what staff was trying to do is accommodate the definition to the way that these uses have been referred to in our existing code throughout the years. So we found some kind of cross terminology as far as a drive up or drive through facility where it intended to mean the same exact thing, but it was used in a different format. So the first definition is really supposed to apply to any business use that has that capacity.
understand that.
So the second one that we have up, which is restaurant excluding drive-through, is really supposed to be for what you would think of as a sit-down restaurant. So that could provide takeout. I think carry-out is becoming more and more popular, and even for restaurants that are customarily sit-down restaurants, carry-outs turning into a large percentage of their revenue. So that's what the restaurant definition was attempting to capture. And then the final is really the drive-in restaurant that allows the drive-through capability.
Yeah, I understand the concept. I think my previous comments apply still. I think it's a bit foggy because we're really talking about drive-through and drive-up are the two key distinctions here. Drive-through means there is a traffic line with potential individuals idling, going through the speakers and whatever other steps are necessary. and that has more disruption to neighborhood residents. A drive up does not have those same kinds of potential problems. Still is not a slam dunk, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have the same degree of problems. So the drive-through is the most critical aspect from protecting the property rights of the adjacent homeowners and their peace and quiet at reasonable hours.
Yeah, I think that staff was including the drive-in reference because, again, it is within our code, and I don't think we have that really proffered regularly by businesses. So that would almost be
Fine.
the drive-in section at a Sonic restaurant, perhaps, where it's not driving in through the window, but you're parking and then the food's brought to the vehicle while it's stationary. So, again, it's not perfect by any means, but we're again trying to make really a silent code section, at least refer to those elements within the code. So we'd be happy to try to wordsmith that further if you think that would be necessary.
My comments
Chair.
apply. My concern is getting rid of 500 feet separation makes a lot of sense. But does that, excuse me, does that also mean 0 feet separation is a good idea too? I mean, I'm more worried about the property owners in those residences right adjacent to your property. And what happens when they propose a drive-through? Does that come right back to us again to have to mediate what degree of noise and disruption is going to be allowed? And I think it's a potential issue. I would suggest, I'm not trying to give you orders, but I would suggest we think about the disruption to the neighbors, especially if they're residential, from a drive-through. A drive-up, drive-in could be mitigated a little bit, but there can still be disruptive people. But the layout is not the same as having to have a drive-through, which is a circular drive all the way around the property. That's all I have to say.
Chair.
Mr. Wiley, and then we'll come to you, Mrs. Clark.
Ladies first. I'll go second.
Oh, ladies first. Mrs. Clark.
I have the same comments that my astute colleague has just presented. I'm getting the feeling that this is the cart before the horse, that we as a city address these issues when a developer comes about and has an idea, and now we have to change everything. I get it that we needed to have considered this a long time ago, so it's not the cart before the horse. We're talking restaurant. He's not able to develop this, find a buyer or someone to build out on it. Why is that the city's problem? I don't know what kind of effort that individual put in to really attract businesses for this parcel of land and then just deem that we're going to put a restaurant here. We don't know what type of restaurant. Do I want to see a White Castle or do I want to see a Starbucks? This is just so a quandary for me. Granted that we need to look at these definitions so we can enable future growth and future opportunities like this, but I feel it's the cart before the horse, that we're acquiescing to someone who bought property, couldn't figure out what to do to market it, and come up with the idea of a restaurant. We don't know what type of restaurant. We have the issue that my colleague brought up with the families or the houses next door. You know, have they been surveyed to understand what impact this is going to have on their quality of life? And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I live in a neighborhood that's very similar. I'll be darned if someone puts some Burger King that they plan on putting on my street and ruin my quality of life with all sorts of riff and raff. I just think this is not quite thought through. I like to accommodate the developer, but I just have questions, just like my colleague has questions. Has anyone been spoken to get buy-in? We need to look at these ordinances of drive-in, drive-through, and get very clear on that. I'd really like to know. They may not get a Zaxby's. They could probably get, we end up with food trucks over there. Who knows? You can drive up and drive through with the food truck. Why is that our challenge that the developer couldn't find someone to do something with that land in terms of configuration? You bought it, you knew that when you bought it. Those are my comments. And again, I'm not against development or growth. I'm just saying it's the cart before the horse for me.
Mr. Chair, may I respond?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to hit all your points, but I didn't write them down, so I'll try my best. I think one of the points or questions you raised was what's the benefit to the city and why? Why does it matter? And so something to keep in mind is that this parcel has been vacant for a very, very, very long time. And I would venture to guess that one of the reasons it's been vacant for so long is because no one has been able to find a tenant or a user that can utilize the space as it is. Also, just a reminder, there is already a Taco Bell on the site, so this isn't introducing a new use, it's just introducing an additional use. Further, please keep in mind, we're not asking to have a drive-through by right. Any future use on the property, if it should have a drive-through, has to come back before this board for a special exception and site plan approval. And to use your example, today, as the code is written, we couldn't even put a Starbucks. So what's happened is the current regulations are so restrictive that they don't really allow for anything. I showed you, and I can put it up again if it's helpful, I showed you the average size of a retail use, so just a regular retail use can't go there. It just doesn't fit, it doesn't work. Once we add setbacks and landscaping and buffers and parking, it can't work. I showed you a sit-down regular restaurant, same issue. So what we're hoping to do here is open up the door for fast casual users. If you'd like, if the chair would allow, I can have the current owner tell you how many places and how many people he's gone to try to get the use here. But my understanding is everyone he's spoken with, every user, and he is a developer, so they have conferences and conventions where they go out and they say, I own this 0.8 acres in Riviera Beach, do you want to come? And to the best of my knowledge and understanding, the response from restaurants was, can I do a drive-through there? Even a Starbucks? And the answer is no. Not as the regulations are currently written because of the distance separation issue. And I know I've said it now 3 times, but just as a reminder, any potential drive-through user, drive-through, drive-up, whoever it is going to have to come back before this body for a special exception approval and a site plan approval. So that site plan approval also gives you the opportunity to address the location of the menu board, right? So if you're concerned about the neighbors to the east, then you can address, that can be addressed during the site plan phase. But we can't bring you a site plan until we have a regulation that allows us to get some additional users to even show an interest in the site. So it doesn't help the city that this parcel has been vacant for so long. And what happens over time is that property values around the vacant parcel start to become depressed because people start to wonder, well, what's going on in this corridor? Why is nothing happening?
I'll buy it.
That's awesome. I can put you in touch with my client, and he can tell you what the asking price
Absolutely,
is.
I'm not seeing that. I'm finding difficulty finding land in any configuration because it's not available. And I appreciate your explanation. I hear you. I agree with some of it. Some of it I don't. I'm cotton to right now, and just because we as a city made some decisions 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago didn't make it right because it may not fit us today. That's what we're trying to look at today, whether it's Blue Herring, Broadway, some of our other streets. Who are we and what do we want to be when we grow up? And so that's on us, and we know quite clear what we want to do. And I like to see feedback from our residents. And I'll give you an example. We have on Broadway, residents clearly said, we do not want a dollar store. It's horrid. It is terrible. And we have heard our residents say, not again. We don't want another 7-Eleven. I've heard them. So, again, I like the residents to come out, and if they co-sign on this, we're going to listen to them. We don't want to interject our personal opinions, but we welcome our residents to come and share in. The thing that I do agree with the ordinance is for future opportunities, yes, we do need to take a look at those definitions so that we can accommodate businesses who want to come in and maybe have, an idea such as yours. I was just feeling it was the cart before the horse. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And,
Yeah,
Mr. Hunt?
And
Mr. Hunt?
yeah.
Mr. Weilander, you had a comment before?
Yeah,
Mr. Hunt?
Sorry.
One thing I noticed about what's going on with the city, and like I said, I'm excited and proud that companies now want to come here and they want to develop and establish something here in the city. My idea is anything that we put on that property there is going to be that's going to have people involved, or people paying for an item or buying something, food or whatever like that, is going to be a distraction to that location regardless. So any answer for that property will be not necessarily a fence, but some kind of border, number one. And then number two, and I'm not an engineer, I'm a school teacher, but I have to come up with all kind of solutions every day to try to get my kids to learn a different way or learn something or see something a different way. And it could be a design issue to where maybe we have a drive-through, but the drive-through is on the west side. And turn around right where the Taco Bell is, and that side, and to loop around, and that way the building is almost sheltering the noise from that end, and then have a wall up, and that way it protects it. But I'm all for growth, and I'm all for potential. That's what I do. That's my job, is to grow the kids, and to be able to, hopefully I took this job to be able to grow the city and make it a better city and make it to where my son will want to come here and stay also. So I think we need to come up with some kind of idea to where both sides are happy, but at the same time, I'm all for growth, and especially if someone is saying, I have this property, I want to build something, and I want to make this profitable, and I want to make this city something else. 'Cause like I said, for 30, 40, 50 years, like she said earlier, we just been sitting in one spot. So and now it's a time, it's opportunity, and that's what our city's been doing for the past 2 years, is trying to grow. And I think we need to make a change at some point. So the 500 rule, I think, definitely that needs to be changed or talked about in some form, because that's not even really conducive to what, if any growing business, especially if we want to bring in any restaurants. But at the same time, we still want the people to be happy in their homes and still have the peace and tranquility. But also, we have to come up with an answer to where it satisfies both. Because I guarantee you, if you put their favorite restaurant on that corner, like he just said about the Zaxby's, you put their favorite restaurant there, they're going to loop around that corner, and they will say, hey, can you knock down a little wall so I can walk through and I can get my food without having to get in my car? So it's a different, way of looking at things. But I just hope we come to a solution to that, and we can continue to grow the city. And thank you for at least trying to bring business into our city.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I could just really quickly, if
Go
you
ahead.
don't mind. Just, I think that the comments I'm hearing are really, and Mr. Gagnon can jump in and correct me, I think they're more site plan issues that have to be addressed at the time of site plan, whether there's a wall, how tall the wall is, what goes around the wall, where the board is placed, the sound, acoustics, code enforcement, all those things. But again, we can't get to any of that until we get through this. So with all due respect, I don't think it's the cart before the horse, nor do I think we're changing for a developer. I think we're asking for the change in order to allow development. And the issues that have been raised, I think, can be addressed during the site plan phase.
Chair, sorry.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes. Just out of curiosity, what is the width of your property line there? Is it about 100 feet, 200 feet?
I think I have the survey. You know, off the top of your head?
What I'm trying to get to is visualizing what a 500-foot separation means in any practical sense. 500 feet's a long, long way. And that would probably stretch all the way past the parts store. 125 feet? Okay,
I have about 124 feet.
okay, I'm sorry, I should have looked to see if that was in there. So essentially, if we take 4 of equivalents of those blocks in all directions, you can't build anything closer than that for any drive-through, drive-in, or anything of that sort. I agree with the basic principle of getting rid of the 500-foot limitation. My concerns about the definitions are separate. So I think if we could get rid of the 500 feet, then we could at least start to make some practical sense of offering the potential for finding a good, suitable candidate. The sensitivity I have is leaving it 0 feet separation merely puts the monkey right back on our shoulders for every single new development that comes in, and then how do we collectively establish a fair and reasonable standard that doesn't change every single time a particular piece of property comes in. So let's separate the discussion into cleaning up the definitions. That's one issue. I agree, my personal view is I agree with getting rid of the 500-foot separation. That makes no sense at all. And I guess maybe we could ask the owner to see if we remove that 500-foot requirement, would that solve the, or would it simplify the process of finding a suitable a buyer or investor in terms of a property?
I know you asked, but what would you be suggesting then if we, so the
Well-
500 feet, and I don't want to speak for city staff, but that's intended to kind of create that distance so you don't have one
Right.
often.
Well, the 500 feet was heritage from the past, I presume. It wasn't recently established. So, Mr. Gagnon, that has been in the code for quite a while, right? 500-foot separation.
So the overlay district, I believe it was originally approved in 1999. With that, we were actually able to pull the original agenda item summary sheet, which kind of provided the staff narrative that went along with the ordinance itself. And at that point in time, there were no architectural themes for the major roadway corridors in the city. There was limited landscape requirements. So I think that staff at that point in time was trying to follow best available planning practices, and drive-through facility kind of fell into that conversation as far as potentially having a separation between uses so there's not oversaturation along, let's say, the Blue Heron corridor where, let's say day one, if it's all green space, it could be any commercial property is now turning into a drive-through. Now, I don't know if at that point in time, if a drive-through restaurant required a special exception approval within general commercial districts. It does currently. The applicant is now proposing, again, to remove that 500-foot requirement between drive-through uses in order to proceed with an application that would still require a special exception approval. So from your standpoint, you have to look at it from a perspective of both, economic value to the city, but also kind of planning theory as well, and kind of balance those two talking points. Really, what direction does the city want to go in?
Obviously, I can't speak for the city, and I can't speak for the board. My personal view is that a 500-foot arbitrary distance separation doesn't seem to make any particular sense, especially when looked at in that particular property. For all practical purposes, you couldn't put anything there for all practical purposes because of the 500-foot separation requirement.
Yeah, when the site plan was originally approved, there were three pads that were created. So we had the O'Reilly's site, which is the westernmost parcel. We had the Taco Bell site, which is the center parcel. And then the third parcel that we're discussing tonight was approved for kind of a retail shell. For whatever reason, that parcel was never developed, so previously during the subdivision process, it was known that that center parcel would be a drive-through. So now we're at the current situation where we do have the separation requirement that is prohibiting the applicant from even providing application for a drive-through use.
Right. Well, the 500 feet comes both from the Taco Bell as well as from this particular property too. So they can, with the 500-foot rule, you couldn't possibly have two adjacent drive-through facilities.
Correct.
So if we were to get rid of the 500-foot issue, leave the definitions separate, would that address the issue that we're trying to cover here in this ordinance? I understand the
So
definitions, we'll put that aside, but the
Right.
real guts of the whole issue, as I understand it, is to get rid of that 500-foot separation, because that's what's creating the problem and the catch-22 that prevents anything from effectively using that property.
That's what
Is
the
that
applicant's
correct?
proposing, correct?
Okay. I know I'm being a pain in the butt on the definitions, but I would be supportive of making an amended resolution about getting rid of the 500 square feet and then having at least an opportunity to adjust the terminology a little bit. But it's up to the chair to see if that goes beyond a question.
Any other questions or comments? In closing, I've looked at it, and Jeff, I have one question to staff. In the current situation, is it required that there's a special exemption now, even if there is a drive-through to one to another?
So
Within the 500
I'll
feet?
use this parcel that we've been discussing tonight. For that zoning district, it has a general commercial zoning, so any drive-through restaurant proposed in general commercial does require a special exception approval.
Okay, so my biggest concern is that if we did make this amendment, it is global. And it could be anywhere in the city that we'd be fighting against the 500 feet. And it would be in my recommendations that it should only be under special exemption, but I would, in my personal opinion is we need to keep the 500 feet apart from each other. But if the property owner wants to make a case that he has a business that is willing to come onto the property that needs the special exemption to continue forward, that business plan can come against this board and the council to request that action to be happened. But until then, I see no reason to get rid of the 500 feet because of the global situation.
So it would, if I understand what you're stating.
It should always fall under a special exemption to put.
So the use will require a special exception approval currently, and that's what the development team is proposing, that the process is utilized. But what would happen is if they attempted to provide staff with an application currently, they would in essence have to provide a similar code amendment or an identical code amendment that we're discussing now that would simultaneously have to be approved with that site plan application in order for us to honor it. So that 500-foot separation is prohibiting a potential application from being submitted, just to try to clarify the process and timing.
So the 500 feet is the control before the special exemption. Could we go by special exemption first and look at the separation between drive-through facilities? Then we know that the property owner has the ability to go shop a preferred drive-through facility that the city could look at and say this is appropriate for that particular piece. We could then question the city and the residents to north, south, east, and west of that if it can happen, and to see what the responsibility is from this board to making it a special exemption to happen.
So,
I don't want to just delete the 500 feet because the amendment goes global. And then as soon as it happens on Broadway, now it can, excuse me, as soon as it happens on Blue Heron, it can now happen on Broadway, it can happen on Barack Obama, it can happen on Military, and we can get inundated by drive-throughs, which could be a negative aspect as staff has already presented. So by dropping it, maybe it is a change to the footage from 500 to 300, but right now there is a Taco Bell that is directly adjacent to it that's 124 feet away, and it's 124 feet away from a resident. And I agree with, my colleagues on the board here that we may be over impacting that location. By dropping that 500 feet, I don't know if it's necessary to do that. Maybe we need to look at a smaller foot separation. That's my comments.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Mr. Hunt.
What I heard you say, Mr. Gagnon, is that the special exemption process cannot waive that 500-foot.
correct.
That's a separate part of the code, and so the special exemption can't overrule that. You have to ultimately get rid of that 500-foot, or modify it, not get rid of it.
Right, so
Modify it so that maybe there's some other more reasonable number. But the special exemption alone can't be worded in such a way that it can overrule that 500-foot.
Right, so when an application is submitted to city staff, it would go through a sufficiency period. And what would happen, let's say tomorrow, if Ms. Calhoun submitted an application for a drive-through at the location that's shown on the screen, during the sufficiency review period, staff would identify the fact that there is a drive-through adjacent, which is contradictory to the 500-foot separation requirement. So in essence, we would have to reject or return the application to the applicant because of that separation requirement in the code. So the special exception process would not be initiated because the applicant wouldn't be deemed valid by staff in the first place.
And then a second question, and that 500-foot separation is in the overlay for the 8 separate roads that are addressed?
Correct.
So if we were to modify the overlay and change the footage, it would only apply to those 8 streets anyways?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Mr. Chair.
Recognized.
We have a lot of conversation going back and forth, just trying to get clarity, just trying to understand the beginning point and how we need to get to the end to figure this out. I'm just asking. We need to, as a body, along with Mr. Gagnon, to sit in some sort of different forum and just talk through this so that we're all can get on the same page and we're all very clear so that we're able to help the applicant. And we can go back and forth and everybody's going to be kind of different. Trying to get us on the same page right now is a bit challenging. I just like to, before I make a decision, I want to be clear. And I want to be clear for the applicant.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Absolutely.
So Mr. Gagnon clearly stated our issue, which is we cannot, we could leave here tonight no different than we came, which means we are not able to go out to the market and present anything different than we have today. And I think, we are here happy to answer any and all questions that anyone might have about how this could impact us. That's why we submitted the application, to have this conversation and get a full understanding. Again, our request is, it doesn't change the fact that any application for a drive-through, drive-up use on this parcel still has to come before this body through the special exception process. All we're asking, as Mr. Gagnon just explained, was for the opportunity to even submit an application. As it stands today, we can't even submit an application. I think if there comes a point or a time where when we have a potential user, assuming that this application is ultimately successful, we are happy to host a workshop so that we can talk about the site plan and further refine and define. But as it stands today, we'll never get to that point. And the prior owner tried it. This owner has tried it. Applicants before me have tried it, and no development has happened. And the longer this stays vacant, the harder it will be, and the longer it will take for the city to see any economic benefit from this parcel, if any. I recognize that it is global, but again, every case that will come before you for a special exception application is separate, and it has to meet the burden, and you have to approve it, and you have to discuss it. But again, we are happy. I'm not even looking at my client because he's probably not going to be happy, but we'll come back at any point, if we have a user or a slew of users, and discuss how that would look and how it would work through the special exception process. But again, we can't even, we tried it. we tried it. We can't even move forward.
And
until
I
this
appreciate that, and I
Mr. Chair,
understand.
may I chime in for 1 minute?
Ms. Shepherd.
Yeah, I haven't said nothing because I've been listening to Ms. Calhoun. That property she's talking about has, and that was when Ms. Wade was the chairwoman, and I think Ms. Sylvia Lee Blue was the vice chair. They wanted to put O'Reilly's there, and it just blew up. I know they were saying that the grease, the oil be changed, blah, blah, blah. Now they're talking about Taco Bell. Taco Bell will never be built in. And we go on and on and on. We will never build this city up because we find a little flaw in the milk. If we have to have a workshop or get some clear understanding, because I clearly have been here 30 years and seen that property turn over and over and over, and we're sitting on the same conclusion that this is wrong and that is wrong. And Mr. Gagnon, it has to stop now with us of getting a clear understanding. A workshop, I think, would be nice, and a setting that we can get the understanding, because we're sitting on their property. This is their property, and they're not going nowhere because and it has to go before council too, and that's going to be another session. But I think it's time now, it's the planning and zoning, that we have to come to conclusion how we're going to handle them. I know they want to move on. I know they want to move on because this property has been vacant for years. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Clark?
I agree with my colleague on the other end. Just as the other applicant before us had a challenge, and they didn't rush us, and we asked them to go back and do some things to help us help them. And they did that, and they walked out of here very happy. So no one is trying to inhibit growth, inhibit what someone wants to do with the land, but I think we need to do our due diligence so that we can have an applicant who walked out of here right before you, respectfully, very happy. They didn't push us. They let us do what we needed to do. We did what we needed to do, and you saw the smiles on their face. You see the smiles on our faces. So I think the residents of this city are going to say, don't get pushed around. You, board, do what you need to do because you're our voice. Make sure you're clear. You make sure you articulate to us that we're clear, and we keep it moving. That's what happened to the applicant before us. And now they're on their merry way to give us this wonderful property. That's all we're asking.
I'm not saying not be, making them
I'm not-
happy.
One at a time.
I'm not saying that,
What I
Miss-
am saying, excuse me, what I'm saying is we keep pushing people away. This particular city will never have growth because we find something to always say, we can't do this, we can't do that. Every city is growing but us. We're the only city. Lake Park is moving. West Palm Beach downtown is booming. And we're sitting in the middle of paradise, and yet we sit here and find something wrong.
I don't find that. I think, again, I just articulated that we worked with a developer who walked out of here very happy, and we're talking about making this applicant very happy too. I'm just saying, just as we did with the other applicant, they were, had some challenges. We needed to think through that. We did. We came to a resolution. It's closed, they're building, and it's not nitpicking. That's not what we're doing. We're just saying if we got questions and we're not clear from the definitions, because that was very clear, we know what the applicant wants to do. Let's take one more meeting and do what we did with the other applicant. They did what they needed to do, and it worked. And it's not that anybody nitpicked. There were gaps in the process of information, and they cleared all of that up. We cleared everything up, and we kept it moving. That's all we would like to do for this applicant, to make sure we're all on the same page. And when we are, we keep it moving. It is not to stop the process. It's to be clear and comfortable, and we can say we made the right decisions, not only as a board, but also for the residents, but it's not inhibiting anything.
I never said you were nitpicking. I said we should stop and make a decision. This has been going on for 30 years. That property has stayed vacant. It is nothing but a Taco Bell. You see that the Walgreens, they're gone. You're gonna have to find somebody to take their property while this particular property is vacant. I am so tired every time we come to the water and drink, somebody said, whoa, the water is dirty, or it's time to move the city forward. I did not say nobody's nitpicking, and I think that we are adults, that we should look and see what's going on, but yet say, let's give these people an opportunity to make sure that their property is protected so they can build. The market might go down tomorrow. Then they're stuck again with a piece of property they cannot move. That's all I'm saying. Never did I say nobody nitpicking. I'm
may I say
saying be
something?
adults and let's move forward.
Chair,
Mr. Chair,
can we vote?
can I just ask one question?
Mr. Newcomb.
What would be the worst case scenario if we were to approve it as is? What's the worst case scenario that could happen?
I think the worst case scenario that it's global, but it still does fall under special exemption.
No, I get it. It's global, but let's say that. So, for instance, like the 500 foot, that's global to the whole city, but ultimately anybody who still have to submit a approval. So, I mean, the worst case scenario is that there's more people submitting application for fast food restaurants, but they still have to get approval.
Through a special exemption.
Yes. So I'm just saying, if I look at, even if we approve this, I don't see there being any real downside. Like, there's no real downside. They still have to get approval. So honestly, I'm not saying I understand everything here, but I don't see a real negative if it's approved.
Mr. Hunt.
Mr. Gagnon, I thought you said that this 500-foot separation requirement is in the overlay only.
We keep having these questions.
That's correct.
And so it does not apply globally. It applies to those 8 streets in the city.
When staff used the reference to globally, it would be global for that overlay.
But
so
it's the
it's
overlay.
not parcel specific.
Okay,
so I
so-
don't want anyone on the board to think it's only for this one parcel.
Precisely why I wanted to be sure. Okay.
Well, I think we've beaten that horse pretty good,
The
so.
horse is dead.
Is there a motion?
Yes, I would like to, motion that we approve as submitted.
Second.
There's a motion for Mr. Gallen and a second for Ms. Shepherd. Roll call?
Margaret Shepherd,
Yes.
William Wiley,
Yes.
Stephen Hunt,
Yes.
James Gallen,
Yes.
Anthony Brown,
Yes.
Evelyn Harris Clark,
No.
John Gustafson.
No.
That vote passed with Miss Evelyn Harris Clark dissenting,
Mr. Gustafson.
and Mr. Gustafson. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. You'll see us again, hopefully. Thank you, Jeff.
Item 10, workshop items. Mr. Gagnon.
So we have no workshop items on tonight's agenda. And I don't believe under general discussion, we've received any other public comment cards. Ms. Davis, do we have any other, no other public comment cards either, Chair? We've received no correspondence either.
I have one item, Mr.
Mr. Hunt.
Mr. Chair, we had talked about trying to find a date for the workshop to discuss the planning and the zoning handbook. And I would like your permission to actually contact each of the members of the board to work out a schedule of what works for them and what works for me. I think adding that to Mr. Gagnon's workload hasn't worked so far. And I just need to be assured that I'm not going to be in violation of the sunshine rule. But I would like very much to work out a date that is compatible with everybody's schedule.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Gagnon. Or council, do we have a problem with that?
Yes, I just want to caution you on contacting board members for things that might come before the board. If it's just a schedule, that's.
Just the schedule. I would not touch any other issue. It would be just, here's some available dates.
Oh, yeah.
Can you do that?
Yeah, scheduling is fine.
If I may, there's actually, I don't remember the specific provider, but it's almost a scheduling tool that you would schedule anyone that you're interested in inviting to the meeting and have open dates, and each individual can click the bubble on the date that could apply. Something like that. I guess out of an abundance of caution, just because sunshine is, and I wouldn't say that you would ever even contemplate breaking any sunshine law, but just removing any sort of possibility of that happening. If we use a scheduling mechanism like that, it might be cleaner and.
I will certainly look at it. I'm not opposed to using the different technologies. The issue is my schedule is getting more and more complicated, and if we agreed to a date that I can't meet, then the whole thing falls apart. So I want to drive the date and at least be candid with what dates I can support and what dates I can't.
Okay,
I'll use whatever tool is necessary.
that's fine.
Very well. Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to
I
adjourn?
move we adjourn.
Second.
Second.